Good morning, all. Good morning, all. It's my pleasure welcoming you all for this particular session. That is the second day of industry experiences on the cybersecurity and resilience of smart grid. I would like to welcome our speaker, Mr. Dijo, our advisor, Dr. G. Samandan, and all the participants for this session. So with this, I would like to hand over the platform to our advisor to introduce our speaker. So over to you.
Thank you, Dana. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to address the gathering now. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Vijay Dijo. He is a senior consultant at Power Projects, Chennai. He has a B Electrical and Electronics degree from NSS College of Engineering, Palakkad, and he has 18 years of service in the entire power sector of power system studies, protection coordination studies, relay setting calculations, RTDS testing, protection, research and development, fault investigation and tripping analysis, electrical system design in power and utility, oil and gas consultant sectors. He has over 9 years of experience in the Gulf and 1 year in Japan in power utility and oil and gas sector. He has visited UK, Qatar, Lebanon, UAE, and all that. He has started his career with Fertilizers and Chemicals Travanco Limited, and then in Kerala State Electricity Board, and afterwards in Tata Consulting Engineers in Bangalore, and later on with Petrofac at Sharjah, and he has worked till till 2020 in Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, DEWA. He has worked important areas like SCADA-based load shedding for CPCL, and then distribution automation for TNEB, and developed a short circuit and protection study transmission system network for DEWA, that is Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. With this brief introduction of the speaker, I hand over the platform to Mr. Dijo. Sir.
Thank you, Sambandhan sir and Dhanlakshmi madam. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you for making a detailed introduction about me. Good morning, everyone. I'm from Power Projects. First of all, I would like to thank the college management, also the organizing committee for giving me and Power Projects an opportunity to handle this session on cybersecurity issues in protective relays. The objective of the presentation is to give the attendees or the audience an overview of the communication requirement in the system normally handled by a protection engineer. Like how the communication aided schemes improve the protection system performance, what are the threats and vulnerabilities faced by the industry in connection with the cybersecurity, what are the mitigation steps, and what are the recommendations like an industry should adopt. So it's basically the presentation will be discussing on the topics like what are the risks involved with respect to cybersecurity and what are the mitigation steps industry should consider. I'm not going into the detail of each type of communication protocol or like what are the layers in that communication protocol and all that. That's not the scope of this presentation. Basically, to give an industry approach, like how we look at it, like the cybersecurity issue. I will share the presentation slides. Let me try to open it. Okay, the presentation slides are visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. So, as I said, these are the topics which will be covered during this 1 hour presentation. Like I'll give a company profile, like what we do from Power Projects generally, and then the introduction about the protection and typical representation of the power system and zones of protection. A role of telecommunication in protection schemes, because the cybersecurity issue comes when there is a communication media, like generally attackers or the intruders are attacking the communication media, and then they do some activities which can cause a disruption to the service or the service. I mean the production line. So next is SCADA, DFR, PMU, synchrophaser. These are the main items which will be having the communication requirement. And what are the data access need for a protection engineer for his work? And communication systems, protocol, cybersecurity standards. I will just brief about these things. And security threats and vulnerabilities, and mitigation action items and conclusion. This is the idea or today's agenda for the presentation. So first of all, I'll give a brief profile about our company, which is Power Project. We have about 48 power system engineers. Now I think the count is slightly over 50 with the recent admissions. I mean the recent joinees. And we have done 102 projects already in 16 countries, and we have done the projects in different sectors. You can see industrial, then commercial buildings and stadiums, the renewable energy, power generation, power transmission, and the isolated systems like offshore or maybe ships, those kind of sectors also. And these are the main services we do. Generally, like most of the services studies from our side. So you can see like we deal with load flow analysis, then voltage dip drop studies, power factor correction studies for an industrial plant, reactive power compensation studies for again industries mostly, and optimal tap selection for the distribution system. Short circuit studies based on IEC and IEEE standards, fault limiting studies with reactors or current limiters or bus splitting, motor acceleration studies. We do the transient stability studies, grid islanding studies, harmonic analysis, relay setting and coordination, arc flash studies, and we do grid connectivity studies, grid impact studies, generation transmission planning, equipment protection, generator protection, motor protection, coming under the protection umbrella. The installation coordination is a very specific study with respect to the over voltage and transient temporary over voltage and all. Transformer energizing studies we do, like if there is a largest transformer to be energized from a weak source, then this is very critical study that may be issue on energizing the transformer on a weak system. So we do such studies. We do earthing studies. We do low voltage right through studies. Then we do the sizing of electrical equipment, maybe detailed engineering for the electrical balance of plant, microgrids and battery energy storage systems, sizing of power conversion and battery systems. So these are our services in general, and we do the services for the industries, and also we give the training to the to students or maybe from the industries also, if they wanted to learn some part of studies, or maybe they wanted to learn some softwares, we provide the service for teaching the softwares also. So these are our software expertise. Like we have available softwares here, and also there are people to do it. I mean, experts to do the studies with these softwares. One is CTAP software, which is used for power system studies, for load flow, short circuit, transient stability, motor starting, all power system studies. DIGSILENT also similar, but the power protection coordination part is little more detailed in DIGSILENT. So we generally use DIGSILENT for some of the protection coordination studies, but ETAP also has similar, but some specific protection coordination studies we might need to use DIGSILENT. Then PSSC also similar software. These three are almost similar. ETAP, DIGSILENT, and PSSC are almost similar software for the power system studies. And then PSCAD and EMTP-RV is basically the EMTP study softwares. Dialex is lighting study software. The PV Assist Homer Pro, Homer Grid, and renewable energy is for the renewable energy sizing requirement. So we handle all the softwares. And just to give a glance of who are our customers or the clients. So we have ABB, Sterling Wilson, Renew Power, many big players are there in the market. Like we have done the projects for them. So just to give an understanding on that, and some of the major project we had shown here. We worked for the distribution of Saudi airport, which is King Fahd International Airport, and we have done a lot of studies on the power, the renewable energy. One of them is from Senvion. And we are done with PSSC or Dixel and Power Factory software on some solar project, which is a very huge one. 1,500 megawatt. We have done some MAL, commercial bidding type of project, the detailed study with the ETAP software. And here it is the Hero production. We have done some distribution studies. Again, ETAP is used there. And in the Pepsi also, Pepsi production plant also. We have done many projects other than this, but just to name few, we have put the slides here. And our office is in Chennai. You can always contact for any training purpose or anything. The slides will be shared to you so that you can have a contact to us anytime. So these are some of the credentials or the appreciation letters we received just to show that from L&T and Mylan. Okay, so that was a brief introduction about our company. Let's go into the topic now. I'll give a brief introduction about the protection relays. Now, the topic is like what are the issues or the cybersecurity issues in protection relays, right? So let's try to understand like how this protection relays or the protection industry has evolved. So initially, like the first protection relay was developed in early years of 1900, and then though the relay was there, but the installation was in 1905, and this relay evolution can be divided mainly into 3 stages. Okay. The first installation was definitely electromechanical relay, wherein we use coils and electromechanical principles to achieve achieve the operation to trip the circuit breaker to protect from a fault. That was the original relays, electromechanical relays. And later on, the static, when the electronic industry has developed, the static or electronic relays were in use from 1960s. And later on, the microprocessor-based relays came, which came in the beginning of 1980 with analog filtering, because initially microprocessor relays has some limitation. The microprocessor relay will be measuring the values and calculating. The calculation blocks will be there for comparing with the set value to take a decision on tripping. But the filtering, like the input current or voltage waveform need to be filtered for the proper operation of the relay. So that filtering was still analog for some time, and then the first fully numerical relay was introduced in 1986. That includes the filtering part also. The numerical filtering techniques was adopted there, and the first fully numerical relay was introduced in 1986. So from this evolution, I can or anyone can see that, okay, initially it was just an electromechanical relay, just a coil and armature arrangement to attract some part, and then the contact will be closed or open accordingly. So during that time, there is no issue of communication. There is no need to communicate with anything. It was a very simple relay, so no question of cyber security or any such problems were not there initially. But when the microprocessor based relays came, and when the communication industry also developed, then the people started utilizing more features from the relay, like communicating with the network and getting kind of real-time information, and the voltage and current information will be sent to other end to verify or to have a comparison to ensure that the relay, ensure that the feeder is faulted or not. So those things will be explained in detail in the upcoming slides. But just to give an understanding, like in the previous era, the protection engineers did not have to worry too much about understanding the communication because such a issue was not there. It was the communication were not there. Communication with respect to the relaying point, I'm saying, not in general. The communication to the relay or we are taking any values from the relay were not there. And then in the new relay, yes, it's always it's becoming a very important aspect for the protection engineers to understand the digital communication system architecture and various issues related to it, and including cybersecurity. So here nowadays all the protection engineers need to have some understanding on the communication. This is one part could be kind of lagging. I mean, in terms of academics also, I feel. I myself felt so because when I came out of the college, the communication part was lesser, and I was involved in the protection coordination studies more. And I myself considered as a good protection engineer, but when it comes to communication part, at one point I was blank there, and then I try to learn by reading it, and then I could now understand that what is the communication issues and what are the protocols. Those things I can understand. So, but I found this in the industry also, like a good communication engineer may not be a good protection engineer, and vice versa also. So nowadays the relays design should have both the features. One is the protection. He should be an expert in protection, and he should be an expert in communication also. Then only they can design a better protection system. So I still feel that there is a gap in that respect. So maybe kind of electrical and communication branch, I don't know, could be a better option if it is for a protection engineer. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this is a typical representation of a power system. Yeah, as you all know, that power system consists of lot of component, mainly generator transformers, and then the voltage will be stepping up to a higher voltage for the transmission system to carry the power from the generating station to the load end. So there will be a transmission network which consists of lot of transmission lines, cable feeders, etc. And then at the transmission level, some of the substation will be stepping down to a voltage with which the power can be distributed. So it goes to the distribution level, and then the load will be like it has to be further step down to connect our normal domestic load. So I did not show that part here. So there will be domestic distribution further from there. So this is the basic idea of a power system, wherein we have generator transformer, bus bars, transmission lines, and then loads, and some of the components which is not shown here, maybe shunt reactor, series capacitors, SVCs. All these things will be a part of power system nowadays. Just to give an idea about the so-and-so protection, like the protection basically trying to do is that whenever there is a fault anywhere in the system, we are trying to isolate the faulty system from the healthy system always. That's what the basic idea of protection. So other attributes, maybe the speed should be higher and it should be reliable. All those things are there, but basic idea is to disconnect the faulty part from the healthy system. So for that, we need to understand, like generators, there will be zone of protection for the, like generator zone of protection will be there, and for the bus bar again, bus zone of protection will be there. And similarly for transformers, another bus bar, and these are the lines, so line protection zone will be there here. I'll show the laser. So here the line protection zone will be there, and again bus bar protection zone or transformer protection zone, or again generator protection zone. Like that it goes on. So just to have an idea, so what is expected is that if there is a fault probably on the line somewhere here, so we expect only this part trip. So this breaker should operate and also this breaker should operate. So that means this fault will be cleared by opening of these two breakers, so it clears the fault. So it's all very basic, but still I thought it would be better to give an idea about it. So that's the thing. So now we'll go to the different types of protection. So all might be knowing like different types of protection includes that overcurrent protection. That's a very basic protection principle. Like when there is a current through the feeder which is higher than some set value, then the relay operates. So there is a relay kept here, and where there is a fault somewhere here, then just the relay senses what is the current through it, which is coming out of the CT secondary, because you cannot put the current measurement to the relay directly from the primary circuit. So we need to go for the CTs, and the CT's current is the secondary current will be always proportional to the primary current. So then based on the current value, the tripping will happen. Like if the relay is set to operate, let's assume that set to operate 1 amps in the secondary current, and it happens to be for a fault 2 amps or 3 amps comes, then relay goes for the operation and give a trip signal to this circuit breaker. So that's how it is. The simple principle of overcurrent protection or the overcurrent relay. Similar way, earth fault protection also, it's exactly the similar way. There we will give the relay the earth fault measurement CT, or maybe we'll do a residual connection of all the phase CTs, like we'll add all the phase CTs together, and the resultant will go into the relays. That means IA plus IB plus IC is nothing but earth fault current 3I0. So that goes into the relay, which is used for protecting against the earth fault on the protected equipment. Another protection is overload protection, generally used for motors and other equipment, even for the cables also, transformers also sometimes they use the overload protection. Basically it calculates the loading of the transformer, try to calculate the temperature of that particular protected equipment from the current. Like it will try to calculate, like we know that the temperature rise is proportional to the losses. So losses we know I squared R. So based on that, the relay will calculate, try to understand what will be the operating temperature of that particular equipment. So based on that, the relay will take a decision on tripping. Again, it takes the CT values. So you can assume that the installation will be something similar. The relay will get a connection from the CT. Now, differential protection. I think this is important, because when we talked about the zones of protection, in order to ensure that the relay is operating only on the zone, we need to understand a little bit about the differential protection. So I'll just explain it briefly. So differential protection is yeah, it's here. So probably let me, yeah, it's here. So you can see two CTs are connected to the relay, same relay. So what it does is that the relay gets information on what is current flowing through and what is current flowing through the other end. So if it happened to be the current flow in this direction, the CT sees the current here and sees the current here. That means the fault is somewhere outside, right? That is why the current direction is like that. So based on the value of the current, like let's assume that the current comes here. From the end A CT gives a current like this, and end B CT gives the current like this. That means this is an external fault, and the direction is just 180 degree, because always we take in power system, we take, I mean, when we talk about the protection part, the current goes to the protected equipment is considered as positive. So that's how the connection will be given to the relay. So here at this point, the connection is given to the relay and the current goes through it in the other direction. So it's not towards the protected equipment, right? If it is going towards the protected equipment, that is positive. So it's 180 degree out of shift, out of phase. So like at any instant now you calculate the sum IA plus IB, it's 0. That's the idea of differential protection. That means if there is an external fault, the protection is not going to operate for an external fault. But if it happens to be a fault here, then this side CT will change its direction. So NPCT will change its direction. It will be like based on the value of the current, it will have a waveform like this. So if you add at any instant you add the waveforms, it will have a resultant value. So that resultant value will be used for the protection trip. I mean, the relay will be getting this resultant value, and then the relay will operate for an internal fault. For the external fault, it does not operate. So that's the protection, what we generally call it as differential protection. And another protection also, we'll just talk about it and then we'll go to the the communication part. The distance relay protection, basically the distance relay is measuring the impedance. In other words, distance, isn't it? Like mainly used for the transmission lines, long transmission lines, we use the distance protection. So if there is a fault somewhere in the system, we know that the impedance of ZL, like whatever impedance comes here, it's based on at what point of the transmission line, at what percentage of transmission line the fault has occurred. So based on that, the impedance will be coming. So basically this relay will calculate the impedance from the voltage and current values it gets, and then based on the impedance value, like we'll give a setting, like let's assume that 80% of the line has some impedance. So we'll set the impedance relay with 80%. That is the setting as 0.8 ZL. Sorry, so up to 80% of the line, this relay is going to see the fault in forward direction, and it's going to give a trip command to this breaker. So that's the thing, the distance protection. So now we will go to the main objective. I mean, the role of telecommunication protection system, I mean protection scheme. So we have seen the differential principle, wherein only one relay is there, which gets the current from both the both NCTs, and the relay calculates the current, which is current from either side will be getting summated, and the resultant current will be used for taking a tripping decision. But let's assume that there is a overhead line. There is an overhead line. There is an overhead line which the length can be very high, isn't it? It can go to hundreds of kilometers, 200, 300 kilometers, or even more. So you cannot keep a relay at one end and then take the CT secondary back to the one end relay. It's almost like impossible, because you cannot send the current 1 amps current in the CT secondary to a large distance like this. It's impossible. So what generally do for such scenarios is that we will have relays on either end. Okay. But in order to calculate the differential current or the resultant current, the current measured by this relay should be available at this point, isn't it? So what we use is that we use the communication link, generally fiber optic communication link. If the distance is very short, we can even use metallic part also. But nowadays the trend is that we use fiber optic communication channels. So there will be communication, fiber optic communication between these two relays, and whatever current is measured by this end will be digitized. I mean, there will be analog to digital converters inside the relay, and that will convert the analog values coming from CTs to digital value, and that will be sent through the communication link back to the relay at substation A. vice versa also, like the current measured by relay at substation A is sent back to the substation B relay, and the calculation will be independently done. And if there is a resultant current for a fault here, then it's going to this relay is going to give a command to open this breaker, and this relay will give a command to open this breaker. So that's what it does. And if the fault is external, so we have already seen that resultant current will not be there for an external fault, because both CTs will be seeing the same current. So no need to worry about that resultant current. Yeah, so that's the scheme. So it tries to calculate the sum of the current in order to ensure that the fault is within the zone of protection. And if there is a resultant current or some current gives a value, then it issuing a trip to the respective breakers. If it is an external, then it's not going to trip. So here someone can have a doubt, like, okay, in the previous case, both connections are coming directly to the relay, right? But now it is going to different relays, and there is a communication between these two. So this communication might create a delay in the reception of the value, I mean, reception of current and voltage information at the other end. So that can create a issue, isn't it? Because it might not be the instantaneous values used for comparison may not be exactly the at the same instant, because there is a time delay of communication propagation. So this is that issue which we were talking about. So here the local end current is actually this one. Yeah, and the remote end current is supposed to be here, supposed to be exactly 180-degree out of shift. But what happens is that there is a communication channel delay. So to the local end relay, it gets information at this instant. Maybe this we can, for the understanding sake, we can say maybe around 4 millisecond or something like that. That's time here. Yeah, 4 millisecond, and then after 4 millisecond on the local end relay gets the information of other end current through the communication channel. So if directly go for comparison or summation, you can see that always there is a resultant current, right? So what the relay will do is that based on the communication delay, it will shift the local end, because it can process the local end current easily, because it gets that value directly. So it processes the local end current, it gives a shift of this 4 millisecond before the calculation of the resultant current. So this is what is called local current memorized for comparison. So the local current actually it happened 4 millisecond early, but this is the from the memory it takes what was the value at 4 millisecond, and then those two values are compared. Then it's again the resultant is going 0. So for an external fault, we are ensuring that the relay won't maloperate. Okay, so the scheme looks good with this, but in case there is a issue in the communication channel, there is a longer time delay, then what could happen? I mean, then like we have taken the channel time delay for comparison as 4 millisecond, but in reality it was slightly more, probably 5 millisecond or something. Because of some issue, maybe there is a device came in between in the communication network, maybe a kind of attenuator or some other device, which without the knowledge of probably the protection engineer, because generally in any substation or any industrial system, for the protection relays, there will be one department, protection department, and there will be a separate department called the telecom department for laying this optic fiber cable and other telecommunication equipments. So in case if the telecommunication people, without informing the protection engineer, they installed a device here to maybe to improve the signal reception at the other end. But the protection engineer did not know about it, then this error can happen, like additional time delay of 1 millisecond happened because of that. So then when the memorized current compared with the remote end current, then there will be always a difference. So this difference may be enough for the for the relay to operate. So that's spurious tripping, because the difference in the communication channel delay, which is adopted in the relay, and actual delay causes the resultant causes some resultant current in the relay calculation, so which can lead to tripping of the circuit breakers, spurious tripping. So it need to be avoided. So that's why actually here also, like the physical like cyber security issue comes here. Like if in the communication network somebody do something, it's going to have the entire protection system. So yeah, so that was for the differential protection. Other point is the distance protection. I'll just give a brief of the distance protection, how the setting will be adopted by the protection engineer. Basically, the relay will be kept at both ends, and each relay will be seeing the fault in the forward direction. And based on the setting, like generally the first zone of setting will be we call it as zone 1, will be set to cover up to 80% of the line. Generally it does not go beyond that. So up to 80% of the line, the zone 1, the first zone of protection will be there, and the setting, the impedance setting will be given in the relay accordingly. So if there is a midpoint fault, you can assume that this relay is operating instantaneously with 0 time delay, because zone 1 setting will be always given as a 0 second, and zone 2, that is after 80%, it gives a 0.4 second in general. So the fault is on midpoint, you can expect this side relay will be operating at 0 millisecond, and also the similar protection features will be there for the other relay also, and the coverage will be towards this side. For this relay, it will be looking towards this side, and this relay will be looking towards this side. So this relay also see the fault before 80%. So both will issues a trip command to this respective breakers at instantaneous time. I mean, within no time it gives a trip command. Yeah, there will be a minor time delay for the calculation part, 10 to 20 millisecond, but otherwise we can consider it as instantaneous tripping. The overall fault clearing time, including the CB opening time and all, we can take it as it operates within 100 millisecond. For a distance protection. But in the case of distance protection comes at remote end, close to the other end breaker, it goes beyond the 80%, right? It goes beyond the 80%. So we can expect that substation B and relay operate immediately, but substation A and relay operate at 400 millisecond. I mean, it goes to the zone 2 timer part, and it operates at with 400 millisecond time delay. This is generally not accepted in the case of 400 kV, or even at some critical lines at 220 kV also, because if the fault clearing time is delayed in a transmission network, it's going to cause issues in stability. And because of that, we have to ensure that this is operating instantaneously for fault anywhere in the system. So with this simple arrangement, distance protection, you cannot do that. Why someone can ask why we are not covering 100% of line in zone 1 itself? Because in that case, even for a bus bar fault, or maybe one line goes out from there, maybe for this fault also, if it is very close to it, then this breaker will trip. So we cannot go up to 100% of the line in zone 1. So that will create a lot of other issues. So we need to limit to 80% for the protection to operate properly. With the communication, we can do faster tripping even for fault at 80% or after 80%. So here what communication will do is that we'll take the case of the same fault. The zone 2 is operated, zone 1 is operated here for the substation B fault. See here, the zone 1 is reaching up to this point for this relay at substation B. So this fault will be seen as zone 1. So zone 1 is operated. Once this is zone 1 is operated, directly it gives a trip command to the respective breaker. Okay. This breaker is tripped. At the same time, it sends a digital signal over the communication network to the other end relay. Okay. that part comes here, and even though zone 1 of this relay did not operate, that's relay at substation end A did not operate, since it is getting a communication feedback or some communication signal from the other end or the remote end, it goes for tripping, right? So only the additional time delay will be the communication time delay, which is caused to communicate the digital signal, the trip signal from this point to this point. So that can be, we can consider it as 5 to 10 milliseconds. So this relay will operate at 100 millisecond, and this relay also operate very close to 100 millisecond. So this tripping scheme is called direct transfer tripping scheme, and the communication part is very important here. So that's the main protection requirement for with respect to the communication point of view. One is the differential, and another one is the distance with communication aided tripping schemes. We call it in different names. Sometimes we call it as communication aided tripping scheme. Sometimes we call it as career aided tripping schemes, like that. So there are a few tripping schemes, like what we have seen is direct transfer trip scheme, which we have just now discussed, and other tripping schemes are listed down. I'm not going into the detail of that. It's also communication based with the permissive from the local end. So maybe for this it's not very important for the time being. I mean, the communication aided scheme improves the protection system. Just to have an understanding, we have already seen it. The response time is increased. Earlier it was taking around 400 millisecond, but now it is reduced to close to 100 millisecond. That's what we have seen it. So so communication aided scheme is a must for the modern grid system, because the grid authorities always specify the requirement of instantaneous fault clearance of fault clearance at HV and EHV voltage level in order to ensure the stability of the grid system. So it's not an option, it's a must. The communication scheme should be used for the protection system. So other communication related points with respect to a protection engineer is, I'll just explain it, not going into the detail of this. You may be knowing about the SCADA, wherein we take the information from all the monitoring device and the status of breakers and maybe the temperature levels of transformers and other things, motors, everything. We convert it into the digital format, and then it's transferred through the communication network to the PCs. I mean, the SCADA PCs will be there at the control rooms, and and the same network is used for controlling the devices also. The BCU is a back controller unit, so it can measure the information from the CTs and VTs, and it can control the breaker to have an operation for close or open. So the SCADA is basically a control, supervisory control and data acquisition software, which will be always used in transmission substations for the EC control. Another thing is the digital fault recorder, which is also taken through the communication network. I mean, the digital fault recorder is basically takes the information from CTs and VTs at all the substation, and it goes through the transmission, I mean the communication media back to one PC, which we call normally as master stations. So the current and voltage information at any location in the system, like even a very big grid system, also it gets a current and voltage information at real time from the respective CTs and VTs. And in case there is a fault, then it can be easily analyzed. So sometimes what happens is the relay trips, but we don't know what is the fault. So we need to go into the detail of fault currents from the fault recorder PCs. Like we need to go there and see like what was the current at that particular instant. And then based on that, we can understand whether it is a real fault or maybe a relay maloperation. So based on that, we can give instruction to restore the transmission line or any transmission feeder which is tripped. So another area is the synchrophaser application, PMUs and synchrophaser application, which is wide area protection is also coming on, maybe the monitoring purpose, like the monitoring the status of the system. We calculate or not calculate, we measure the values first. Voltage and current values will be measured with a device called PMU, phaser measurement unit. And this will be always time synchronized. That's important. Like it will be the satellite time synchronization will be done at PMU level, which is kept at each substation. And PMU information will be sent through the communication network to the centralized location, and where there will be softwares to analyze the healthiness of entire system, and to give an alarm that okay, this part of the system is not very stable, could you should do some action like reducing the load or maybe diverting the load through some other feeders like that. So that softwares will be there to analyze the information coming into the this wide area protection systems. So this was basically what we were discussing. What are the communication related topics with respect to a protection engineer? So now it's clear that a protection engineer should have access to the microprocessor based protection relays, digital fault recorders, phaser measurement units, SCADA systems, substation computers, and security system, fire intrusion, etc. So if you take the case of a protection relay, what are the requirements in the protection relay? Nowadays, the protection relay is not just used for the protection. Now, most of the time this relay is used for monitoring. Like there will be direct connection to the SCADA network from the relay to see the status of the system, what is the breaker on off condition, on off status, and this relay will be also used for tripping or closing the breaker. So it has more protection functionality, monitoring functionality, metering functionality, and automation and control functionalities also. So this is where one of the issue comes for the protection engineer, because now the relay is not or the protection engineer is not a custodian for the relay. There are other people also used, I mean the control people or the SCADA people, operation people, all are using this information what is there in the relay directly. So it's a concern. Different parties are involved with same equipment. So protection engineer knows the criticality of protection settings. So there is a chance of somebody by mistake changes the setting and then creates an issue in the grid. Some of the feeders can maltrip because of some wrong setting, which protection engineer is not knowing. So that's the problem. So what are the features available in the modern protection relays to avoid this? So this is considered a cybersecurity issue. Maybe some people at automation level uses that network for some other purpose, but by mistake or maybe somebody wanted to intentionally do it, they can change the setting of the relay also from the communication network. So what the relay giving an option to the protection engineers is that the passwords can be set in the relay to avoid, like if somebody wanted to change some setting, they need to enter some specific password. There are different levels of password available in the relay. One is for viewing. So viewing, maybe password will be given to many people, but the change of settings, there will be password which will be handled by maybe one protection engineer who is custodian of that particular area. And another option is login log for setting changes. So when there is a setting changes, we can set the relay to give an alarm to the substation control and monitoring system, so that the protection engineers knows that okay, there is some changes happened here, so he can he will have his own logs for checking, like when he has changed the settings. So if it is not matching with that, then he can straight away go into the relay and see like if there is an issue in the settings. So that is one thing. And yeah, the password for different passwords for multiple levels of access. Like one is a read only option, which may be given to large number of users, but higher level for protection engineer for changing the protection settings. So in the industry, what we generally follow is that the automation engineer or the SCADA engineer or the operation engineer should discuss with the protection engineer for any changes required in the relay, even though it's an automation part of change, but he should discuss it with the protection engineer. So it's like protection engineer is considered as a custodian of the protection relay. So that's how we are able to, at the industry level, we are able to manage the cybersecurity issues. And the communication systems of the various relays, or we call it as IEDs, intelligent electronics device. So, like nowadays, or any device can be connected directly to the internet. We can open a web browser and just put that the address of that particular device. Then you can open all the settings on the web browser directly. So this causes an issue also, like there is no sophisticated software required for changing any setting in the relay. Somebody can go into the relay and then connect the relay with a LAN cable or something, and then just type the address of the relay. If they get that address through some other source, then they can change, anyone can change the settings. So that's a concern also. So generally what at the industry level, what we do is that there is an option available in the relay to disable the setting changes from a web browser. So generally we use this option to avoid somebody comes intentionally or unknowingly changes the settings. So that is one thing. And also the unused ports in the relay can be disabled, because some of the ports will be used for the communication between the relays. Those, if somebody removes it, will directly get an alarm at the control station that okay, there is a problem for the communication of the relays. So we can easily track. But if some of the ports are not used, we will keep it spare. I mean, we don't do anything generally, but nowadays what industries are doing is that we will disable internally inside the relay. We can disable that with the password protected setting changes. We can disable those ports. And also we need to have the security for each and every component in the networks, like which is generally comes by default. And we can have some IP filtering, like only some particular IP should be able to enter into the network. So such kind of filtering possibilities are also there. Then encryption possibilities also there, so that anybody cannot send the traffic, I mean data, into the network. It need to be encrypted, and then only it can be sent, or once it is received by the IED, it will check whether the encryption is correct or not, then only it will take any action. So these are the ways the security threats can be handled by the industry. So this part we have already seen for the communication part for the current differential or the distance application. So like what are the threats for that? I mean, we'll just discuss. So if somebody can enter into the protection channels, like let's assume that the protection channels is here. So somebody can enter into this protection channel. They can keep they can do something here. So there are two types of attacks. One is denial of service, maybe a break on that communication channel itself. So nothing is, no data is transferred from one end to another end. So that is one case. The second case is the traffic manipulation, means with the network entering into that communication network, somebody can manipulate the information through that, so that wrong tripping happens. So that also can be done. So that is nothing but like this DTT scheme we already have seen, like when there is a fault seen on zone 1, then it gives a signal back to the other end relay, it operates. So the last one is exactly the one which we have discussed. So I'll try to explain with DTT. So if somebody do a break on that communication cable, that is denial of service and nothing but a break in the cable. So in that case, no information coming back from other end. So even though there is a requirement for the relay to operate, immediately, like if the fault is on location after 80%, relay is supposed to operate instantaneously, but because of break in the system, it cannot operate. So it goes for the 400 millisecond time delayed operation. So this is one of the risk. And the other one is traffic manipulation. So the intruder who's get into the communication network sends a signal, false signal back to the other end. So when the signal is received at the other end, it issues a trip command. So it's a nuisance tripping. No fault, but the attacker was able to send a signal back to the remote end, back to the other end. Then it gives a false trip. It's a similar case for other schemes also, but since I haven't discussed in detail about the other schemes, I'm not talking about that, but this is how it is. For the other schemes also, there are issues when the intruder goes into the communication channel and do some harm to that communication part. So one can ask, like, what are the causes of it and what are the threats? So one is what industry is considering it as like job dissatisfaction. So if some people are not satisfied with their present jobs, they might create some issues to the companies. I mean, they might make some issues in the kind of cyber security attack. They will do it in order to have some disruption in service or not. Another thing is economic gain. Some people will be working for someone else to gain the kind of money transfer will be there, and based on that they can cause a problem to the communication network, which can lead to tripping, unnecessary tripping. And competitor discrediting also one of other cause, like wanted to discredit one of the relay, maybe one particular make. So other competitor try to enter into those relays. The competitors relay, and then make some problem to that relay. So maybe it gives a image that one particular make is not good. So that's also there. And job security is also not very common, but some people try to make password protection for all the equipment, which known by them, only them. And then they think that, okay, if I am the only person to do some changes in that, then my job is secured. So I don't know, this concept is also there for some other people, but that's one of the reason also. Then blackmailing is also could be one of the reason, and terrorism or the political reasons which somebody intentionally doing this part. So what are the vulnerabilities which can lead somebody to enter into the communication network and cause an interruption to the service? So one is the security gaps in the computer software, which can lead to this kind of scenarios, like the proper antivirus software is not installed, or a firewall is not set correctly, so some other people can enter into the network and then they can cause a problem. And also sometimes the user might do some like for his convenience, he might set something like the email attachment should be automatically downloaded and opened, something like that. So generally we should not do it, but for some people they might do it, and then if it is a script file or something, and if he automatically gets opened, then the intruder can go into the network. So if the antivirus the computer is not adequately checked actually. So that's one of the option. Then another thing is vulnerability related to the communication links and networking software, similar to this, but related to the networking components. Then system administrator issues are also another cause for it. Maybe basically the system administrator will have the access rights to do many changes, like account and access control setup, software installation privileges will be there for the system administrators. system monitoring and auditing. So if we make some mistakes, there are chances that some malicious software gets installed and it causes a problem for the system. And vulnerabilities based on the user personnel. Yeah, this is what I said. Maybe some of the emails attachment automatically gets opened, that creates an issue. And other thing is that user is not setting the password for his convenience, or he sets a password and user ID and password the same, or some password easily guessable by third party. Those type of vulnerabilities are there. Then some other method which we cannot foresee right now what intruder is doing. So these are the vulnerabilities which generally comes. So when we talk about the protection communication, these are the main protocols which I'm not going into the detail. IEC 60870-5 DNP 3.0. IEC 60870-6, and the most common protocol nowadays is IEC 61850, where we can utilize this for not just for the monitoring, we can utilize this for control, protection, interlock tripping. I mean, it can be used in the scheme also. Generally, other protection or protocols, we are not doing that part, but the IEC 61850, the speed of kind of goose signal is very fast, and then it can be used for the interlocking or control circuitry also, in order to reduce the actual physical cabling, I mean metallic cabling. It can be used. So those are the protocols and some cybersecurity standard. Just to give you an idea, these are the international cybersecurity standard. IEC is European standard, and C37 is American standard, ANSI standard, and NERC, the North American standard is there. NERC, North American Electric Reliability Corporation. So they have critical infrastructure protection standards are there. So those are the standards widely used. And in India also we have standards available. The National Cybersecurity Policy in 2013, and then that does not include much about the power system component protection. What are the additional things to be considered? But I think in 2016 or 15 there was another one, the protection of critical infrastructure policy also then. And I think the work is evolving on coming up with a proper guideline for cybersecurity mitigation steps by the government of India also. So that's going on. So this part we have already seen, already seen with other slide, what are the vulnerabilities and what are the causes for it. So some of the mitigation part in the previous part we already discussed, but I'm listing out all these things here. The password and key management, that is one thing. And procedural security, the monitoring and controlling of communication and IEDs, basically kind of a regular checking of logs. Okay, what has done, who has accessed what kind of logs the security people should have it, and they should analyze this to understand, okay, is there any issue on that part. Then LAN and IP security, the configuration and change control management, like what I said, if there is a change of settings or configuration, then there should be a separate password to be given that will be known to very few people, like that. And protection of maintenance ports, I mean unused ports need to be disabled. And the physical security is one of the big thing like nowadays, because this communication, whatever communication we are talking about with respect to protection, is mainly private or closed network. It's not available mostly at outside, communication, I mean through internet and all that. So the physical security has a very big meaning for here in the case of protection communication, because if somebody enters into the substation, unauthorized entry, and he makes some issue in the network, that can cause a problem. So remote access, again, The relay can be accessed from the control room. That is one of the remote access, or maybe from the master station kept either in the control room or any other departments for their viewing purpose. So those are the remote access to the relay. And the system should have intuition of detection systems. Then if there is a cyber security attack, and then the industry should have proper steps to come up with a recovery plan or remedial action from the cyber security attack. Physical security, yes, it's all of us know basically the fencing, like what industry is doing is that fencing and gates, other barriers to restrict the access, the limiting access to authorized to only to the authorized persons by having kind of access card systems, smart access card systems to open the gates or the doors of control room. So this is widely implemented in the industry. The control rooms will be accessible only with card. I mean, card given to the respective employees. Then there will be alarm system, like if there is a entry by somebody, and then automatically some alarm goes to the security team. And the perimeter alarm system, just to check whether somebody enters into the perimeter, I mean within the compound of compound where these critical systems are placed. And alarm CCTV, it's all common. Then guards sometimes there is a special event or if they doubt that there are some targeted operation on particular substation, they will put some security guards there. Most of the time the transmission substation will be operating unmanned way. Like in India, it's still in many places operators are there, but other countries, most of the transmission substations are operated unmanned. I mean, nobody will be there to operate. All operation will be done from the control station. So sometimes in some other station they still keep some security guards to to report if there is anybody comes, or they will keep a log of all the people entering into the substation. And then vehicle barriers, adequate lighting, signage, then comprehensive security awareness program will be given to all the employees. Then these are some of the mitigation action items what industry generally do. One is, first thing is there should be a policy, security policy. They need to prepare considering the security, cyber security standards and what is applicable for their system. They need to come up with a security policy, which generally all the major utilities or the industries are doing this part. And assess existing communication channels, vulnerabilities to intrusion. This assessing part need to be done on a regular basis, and implement and enforce policies for computer usage, remote control access, and frequent. So this is basically the part of the policies itself. And monitor the logs, like like always monitor what is happening to the systems, like who is accessing, who is taking more data, who is downloading more information from it, when the settings are changed, and is there any place where it can be verified that okay, this change is intended change. So this monitor logs is another thing. Monitor traffic, who is getting access more, who is taking more data from the system. So generally industries will have separate arrangement, like OT security, not IT security generally. OT security is operation technology, not information technology. So OT security team will be there, so who will be taking care of all these power system component cyber security part generally. So yeah, I've come to almost an end. The conclusion is that protection and securing of network communication and intelligent equipment and data is vital to the operation of the future energy system, because we cannot avoid the communication part from the protection system. So it cannot be avoided. It's becoming a vital part of the future energy system. So developing better security policy and its strict implementation will reduce the cyber security events that leads to disruption of service. So with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. If you have any doubt on this part, you can please ask.
Dear participants, if you have any doubt, you can unmute audio and or post it in the chat box.
Sorry, I'm unable to hear now. Somebody is talking.
Dear participants, if you have any question, any queries, unmute your audio and ask or post it in the chat box. Did you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I'm there's some background noise is there. Hello.
Yes, I am able to hear.
Sir, one question in the chat box, sir.
Okay. Yes.
What is a coordinated cyber attack? Mr. Suresh asked this one.
Yeah, coordinated cyber attack is basically like the intruders are targeting to one particular utility. Probably we take the case of one particular utility. Then they try to enter into their network and continuously creating issues. That's a coordinated one. I think in the a few years back in Ukraine, they were facing a lot of issues in 2018, where they're getting issues consistently. I mean, their network were down for a longer time actually. So that's kind of like it's not for just to just to see that whether he's able to enter into that or not. Maybe they might have got some funding from some other agencies or maybe terrorist or somebody. We don't know about that political part, but still that could be a cause for this coordinated cyber attack. Yes.
Any other queries from participants? Sir?
Maybe if there are any other questions, they can send it by email to us, and we can pass it on to our speaker, and we can get the reply later on in case they have any specific.
Sir, can you share your PPT?
Yeah, I will send it to you.
Yes,
Your
sir.
emails. Yes, yeah,
Yes.
I'll do that.
Yes, sir. On behalf of KCG College of Technology, I would like to thank Mr. Vijay Dijo, our projects, for his wonderful and informative talk. I'm sure that our participant could understand about zone of protection, role of telecommunication in protection schemes, and the idea about SCADA and Synchro Phasar, then some of the cybersecurity and its standards and protocols, and some of mitigation action. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to present this part. It was a really good thing, to come up with this presentation, and it was a good audience, and I was able to present it. Like I could complete the presentation, and then I'm ready for any questions. Like it can be sent over email anytime, so I can respond to the questions at any time. So
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr. Dijo. I think it was quite a wonderful talk. You have covered from the very beginning of the protection era, from
Yes.
electromechanical to static relays, and then microprocessor relays, and then it's the communication aided relays, and all the why it is now getting up into complex networks, through the communication, how to avoid this. And we cannot eliminate this because protection was earlier called as a silent sentinel, sitting
Right.
alone, nothing happens for it, it works only when there is a fault happens. But nowadays we are integrating everything, monitoring, metering, everything, controls, So
Yes.
when we develop all these, naturally we use the latest technologies, and there are people to hack into the system.
That's
So the protection engineers, as you rightly said, must be aware and be in sync with the communication, whatever technology progress, so that we are able to deliver the power to the consumers without any interruption, as planned by the system authorities.
Yes.
So it's a very nice subject, and we have covered very well, giving from the electromechanical era and now where we are. And definitely this gives a motivation for other engineers to get into the area for any research activities, as well as to
Yes.
collaborate with some projects with the industries. Thanks a lot, Mr. Vijo. Thanks again to your organization, Power Projects, for deputing you to our session.
Yes. Okay.
And
Thank
I
you.
really thank you, sir.
Thank you very
I
much.
think we shall be
Nice
okay,
remark.
sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.